Welcome to Ideation Collective. This is part 2 of our episode with David Covey.
I think a lot of times, we talk about this in the career trap. We're whole people. You don't go work for a company just because you get paid fairly. That's just one of 4 aspects. It's your body. It's taking care of your body. It's the financials. You got to have your mind utilized, and you got to have your heart engaged, which is the passion, and you got to have your spirit.
This is another episode of our Innovation and Leadership series where we interview pro athletes, world-class musicians, CEOs, Hollywood filmmakers, and a wide variety of other high achievers. Also, I want to talk to you about one of our show's sponsors. I met these guys back on episode 6. CEO Zach Smith was telling me all about starting a skateboard company and how much he hated doing the bookkeeping for a skateboard shop, and how he really got led to start this business, Bookly, that's a hybrid combining bookkeeping software and human services. And I'll tell you why I let him become a sponsor. It's because I use their service now. I don't love paying $50 an hour for bookkeepers to do stuff that I know software could do way, way cheaper. But I don't love bookkeeping at all. So I want a real live human who knows what they're talking about to help me with the stuff I don't understand. Probably the straw that broke the camel's back for me, though, the thing that put me over the top was that they could do my taxes and payroll also. So totally suggest checking them out. Go to their website, bookly.co, and check out their flat rates. I've been super happy with them. So now on to today's episode. So David, we've been talking about a number of things. One thing we'd love to do when we have authors on the show is talk about the process. There's so many people that feel like they have a book inside them, and they can feel overwhelmed when they feel like there's only one way to write a book. And they heard, oh, this is how so-and-so did it, and I don't know if I could do it that way. We find that hearing how multiple people have done it helps people identify, some element that maybe they're interested in. What's the process like for you?
Yeah, so like I said, when we first started writing this, we wrote it like a regular self-help. And I don't think the world needs another, I think there's like 12,000 self-help. I think there's like 12,000 self-help books that come out a year. So we started to resonate with the idea of telling a story, okay? And one of my favorite books that has just come out, I got the advanced reader copy, and the book has just come out. It's called Building a Story Brand, and it's by Donald Miller. He's out of Nashville, Tennessee. And he talks about this concept of helping companies, clarify their message. If you look at websites nowadays, it's very complicated, it's very confusing, and people need to be more clear, right, in terms of their website messaging. But the whole idea around the story brand was, you learn through, and this is how great movies are made and so forth, is you learn through a story, right? And a story follows a certain pattern. So in this Trap Tales book, we followed that same pattern, and that is Alex, who's the main character, who's having these problems. He's falling into traps, and that's part 2 of Story Brand, and he meets his guide, and his guide is Victoria, who is his high school friend's mother, and when he's on vacation in Hawaii. And his guide helps him and gives him a plan on how to fall out of the traps that he's fallen into. So that's the plan. That's either going to result in success, if he can successfully change, or it's going to result in failure, right? And if you look at any of the movies, like Star Wars, you have Luke, and he's got to save the Empire, and Darth Vader's going to try to bring it down, and Yoda and Obi-Wan is his guide, and he's going to help him. He's going to give him a plan. That's going to result in the Empire being crushed, and or the rebellion being crushed. It's going to either have great success or failure. And all great movies and great stories follow that same framework. So I started to love this. I hated it at first when I started writing a story. I was not very subtle. I would stuff like, well, how are things going? Alex, oh, they're going great, Victoria. I sure love you. You're awesome. And it's just like, and I had to learn how to bring conflict in the story and intrigue in the story. And I had to be more subtle and not reveal everything up front. So I started to love writing this story. And I started to get into the characters. There's one character in the book named Chaz. And Chaz is Alex's coworker. And he's trying to keep Chaz in the same place. And I'm sure we have a lot of people that are like that in our life, that are, you know, trying to keep us from changing on the things that we need to change. And one of the insights in the book that I think you resonated with, Jess, is this idea around the change trap. And it's either you change because your conscience is telling you, or you change because your circumstances force you to. So it's either the force of conscience or the force of circumstance. And unfortunately, most of us, and Alex in this book, was in that point where he wasn't going to change until his, circumstances required him to. And he had to deal with some crises in his life. And that's what it's like for most people, is they don't change courageously when their conscience dictates. They change when their circumstances force them to change. And it's so hard. And when you think about, all of us know what we need to do. It's not a matter of not knowing what to do or not knowing what to change or improve. It's a matter of acting. It's a matter of actually following through on it. And that takes a lot of courage, okay? And old habits die hard, and it's hard to change your lifestyle and the way that you've been. It's easier for you to wait for other people to change. And in fact, in the relationship trap, this, we're talking about like a marriage relationship. That's one of the things that we say is that, if you're waiting for your spouse to change, you're going to be in for a long, long wait, right? But if you're the first one to change and you're willing to, make improvements in your marriage or in your relationship, then it's amazing. The other person is forced to deal with that. It's just like, okay, well, I guess I'll, first of all, they question your intent. Is this real? And how long is this going to last? And then after a while, they start to see you in a new light, and they're forced to change, right? And improve because of the goodness, that you've exhibited.
Well, it is, yeah. I've seen that so much of the being willing to make the hard right choice when the easy wrong one is right there is such a invitation for the other humans observing it to consider the same thing. And, taking a bit of a right turn, one of the things that we like to ask a lot of our guests is, for people who have had a business model going a certain way for some time, the show's called Innovation and Leadership. What if we need to innovate our own business models, right? So our listeners know we've got a charity called Child Rescue trying to prevent child trafficking. We built a aftercare facility in Cusco, Peru, and we have a high school prevention program here in the States, and we pay for law enforcement training, stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And so if you were our marketing advisor, and we're saying, hey, David, what would you do if you were us to get more people to care about this cause? What kind of ideas would you have for us?
It's a great question. I think that you got to do something that is uniquely suited to your, to your talents, to your passion, to your vision of what you'd like to see. And I think a lot of times, we talk about this in the career trap. We're whole people. You don't go work for a company just because you get paid fairly. That's just one of four aspects. It's your body. It's taking care of your body. It's the financials. You got to have your mind utilized, and you got to have your heart engaged, which is the passion, and you got to have your spirit, engaged as well. That's where you're making a contribution. You're making a difference. And so I think that a lot of times people are copycats, and they don't do something that's uniquely fits their bill. I love what J.J. Watt has done, the Houston Texans, in raising money for the Hurricanes in Houston, and he just did that on his own. And I think. And
for everybody that's not familiar, can you describe that?
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but I know that he was just saying, "Hey, we need to do something for the my community that I live in Houston, Texas." And he started to, he made a big donation himself, and then he started to get others to make a huge donation. And before you know it, I think it was like $35 million. He raised like $35 million in a matter of like a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. It was just incredible. So I love that, because that was just something where he could make an impact and make a difference, and make a contribution.
And there again, that principle of going first too.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think there is, it's the idea that the first person through the wall is all a little bit bloodied, and I'm in the training industry, and this is kind of a dinosaur industry, to be honest.
Well, actually, I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
So I love the advice for child rescue of, I feel like what you're saying is, don't be a copycat. Figure out the aspect of it that's unique for you and that you're passionate about.
That's
is that?
it. Yep.
So, and I really want to talk about this. We've got a consulting firm called Mylan Advisors where we have these special ops guys and FBI hostage negotiators go do corporate training, right?
Yep.
And from a two-day seminar and fill in the handbook world to everybody's got a device nowadays, and just all sorts of things about society are changing the way people want to learn. You have this 20-year insider's view from one of the biggest training companies that's at least one of the most well-known in the history of the U.S., right?
Yep.
As you look at the next handful of years, what do you think all the training companies out there need to be thinking about?
Well, the baby boomers are retiring. I don't know what it is, like 10,000 a day or something like that. It's a huge number. So, and, I'm a Gen Xer. No one cares about the Gen Xers, but the millennials... But the millennials, are not going to do training in the way that the baby boomers have done it, and so we're having to reinvent ourselves. So I came from this world of Franklin Covey, which is instructor-led training, and the rest of the training world is really instructor-led training, and that world is, that's still going to be important. People still want to get training through an instructor. But there's so many other options now. People want online, and they want shorter, and they want faster and quicker. So we actually have another company called Wisdom Destinations, and it's micro learning. It's audio micro learning, and we have these in 30-minute segments on different topics, and it's very unique topics, that you wouldn't find anywhere out in the marketplace. So like there's one topic on forgiveness. And how that needs to be a big part of our life, not only in our work life, but our family and personal life. And so people are going to get training in much different ways, and we got to be able to be innovative and creative on how we bring it. So like with Trap Tales, I could just go the traditional route, Stefan and I, and we could create just a training course, but we don't want to do that. We want to be innovative, and we want to be unique and different and bring it to the world in a different way. That's why maybe having a game, or we're thinking about doing a show, like a movie, on Trap Tales, or a series, and there's just a lot of different ways in which people can access, content and information than what's been part of the the traditional past, which is just instructor-led training and so forth. So I say it's the dinosaur industry just because a lot of the training firms are slow to adapt and adjust, and I think those are the ones that don't adjust and adapt. They're going to find themselves either less relevant or out of business.
Our sponsor for this episode of Innovation and Leadership is Skillshare. If you're not familiar with them, they're an online learning platform with over 18,000 classes on business and marketing and entrepreneurship and technology, and lots of other classes too, illustration, other things I'm interested in. They've given us a special offer where, for the listeners of our show, you can get 2 months for just 99 cents, where you can see all these 18,000 classes, unlimited access. It's Skillshare.com/leader. And I think what I like about them most is their high-quality classes that are from high-credibility instructors, content marketing right from Contently, or the one I took was last was email marketing right from MailChimp, where these are folks who are obviously seeing millions of other people's email marketing campaigns go out, so they really are kind of a high credibility source of information. So again, it's Skillshare.com/leader, 99 cents for complete access to all their courses for the next 2 months. One last time, Skillshare.com/leader. Thanks. Well, again, we both have a lot of friends in a number of these other companies out there, right? And you look at, what is it, $130 billion a year industry, right?
Yep.
And I mean, for me, I just hear like Clayton Christensen's words ringing in my ears of, hey, they don't want to sacrifice the current dollars to invent the new system, right? Because, man, at a couple $100 a handbook, there's a lot of money to be made there. And if we're going from $100 to $300 per participant to $12 for the online access.
That's right.
And
Yep.
like I think in some ways a legitimate concern of cannibalization.
Yep.
Right. But then there is the issue of, by not addressing it, like back to your like circumstance or conscience.
Yeah.
This may not be a conscience thing.
No, but you got to
at some
reinvent
point-
yourself or you're going to die.
At
Yep.
some point, somebody, if you don't reinvent yourself,
Yep.
somebody's going to reinvent for you.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
Except that the money's going to start going to their company instead.
That's right. And then you have limited options and choices.
Because
at
now
that
you're
point.
the copycat
Yeah.
and you're playing catch up, right? Well,
So I don't know what
Yeah.
I don't know what it is going to be. I mean, I personally believe that the person that figures out the iTunes for training, and I don't think it's going to be Apple, because I don't think they care enough about the training industry to want to disrupt it. But someone could disrupt it if they could create the iTunes for training. So could you imagine if you could go online and get awesome, first class, relevant training on any topic that you wanted in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, for a very low cost. And that was superior to anything else out there. I mean, something like that, I think, would disrupt the whole industry.
yeah.
And it may be just a series of companies that are doing that, and you're either kind of part of that or not part of that. I don't
wanna
imagine
ask
one
you
big
about-
company would do that, but
Yeah, I want to ask you about this. So we named our company Myelin, about the stuff that wraps around the neurons in your brain.
Okay,
When you
yeah.
do enough meaningful repetition, so electrical impulses can go faster. Right?
Yep.
So we hired these. So we got some pro athletes, and I told you about the Spec Ops guy and the FBI guy, right? Guys who have done something repeatedly to get to an uncommon skill set at it.
Yep.
So to me, I love microlearning. I was learning Spanish, relearning Spanish on Duolingo.
Yep.
Like literally just in 3 minutes in the restroom. Do you know what I mean? You get
love
through
it.
2 little things
Yep.
quick, right?
Yep.
And so I love that aspect of it. But for me, I do look at like literally our consultants who are actually world class, not like hyperbole,
Yep.
like actual
Yep.
world class at what they do. And there is like the sustained effort of meaningful repetitions, right?
Yes.
And so I'm interested if you have any insight of anybody who is doing the digital or the micro learning, but has got, whether it's a game or some sort of mechanism to help people do those small things enough times that there's legitimate skill building rather than just awareness of what I should do.
I mean, there's a lot of companies I admire, I mean, lynda.com, I think that they're trying that, and you had, what was it, LinkedIn that bought, lynda.com. But that is, to me, is not best in class training,
I love Linda. I learned how to
Yeah.
edit video off
I think
Premiere.
it's good for a
right?
lot of technical stuff, but for a lot of the soft skills stuff, I don't think it's best in class training. So that's the problem, is that you can go to Lynda for a lot of different things, but are you going to get the best in class training for particular soft skill topics? No, you're not. Mind Gym, I don't know if you've heard of Mind
No.
Gym. It's a company out of the UK, and they've done some amazing things with micro learning. And I put in a shameless plug for Wisdom Destinations.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not even launched yet, but
Okay.
we're going to be launching.
What's the website going to be?
wisdomdestinations.com.
Okay.
But and then this has really been my partner's brainchild. He's he spent so much time on it. But I think that offerings like that is kind of where the wave of the future is going. So it's people just want it. They don't want the fluff anymore. So that's why when people have like 3 days or 5 days, it's like, are you kidding? And I think that about books as well. I get frustrated when I see a book, that is 400 pages, that's talking about a certain concept. And it's like, really? Could you not reduce it to 150 pages or 200 pages?
It's kinda
Give
like
me the
the-
essence, I don't need to know, all of these things. And some of these books, honestly, should be like an article, You need a 20-page article. I could learn, about the essence of it. So we are at that point now where there's not the patience anymore, both individuals and companies. They want what they want now, and they want the best in class, and they want it at the lowest price. And so that's where it's going. It's going to micro learning. One of the things that I think that my former company has done really well, Franklin Covey, is they have a lot of digital training, which I think is great. And so they're giving clients the option to buy the Franklin Covey content digitally.
One thing along this line I'd love for you to weigh in on, because I understand you guys do so these great training companies here that need to figure out how to go international. That's who a lot of your clients are at SM Cov. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
I'd be interested in if you agree with my observation. It feels a little bit like there's been an industry largely built around the seminar and handbook business as a generalization, right?
Yep.
To me, it feels like that is on its way out. And it's almost like a polarization where there's tons of people willing to go for the short, quick, and then there's the people who want mastery, who are willing to pay more and more for one-on-one individualized consulting.
Yep.
Do you observe that? Do you see the same thing or not as much?
No, I think you're exactly right. It's a trend, and it's a melting iceberg, right? So those that are in this instructor-led training, which is most of the training companies, they know they're on a melting iceberg, They're just trying to figure out, what do I do? This is my main business. So it's kind of like what Kimberly Clark did. Darwin, was I want to say Charles Darwin. That's not Charles Darwin, but whatever his first name was. When he sold the Kimberly Clark plants, Kimberly Clark makes Kleenex and Huggies, and I worked for Procter & Gamble, so I know Kimberly Clark really well. But when Darwin, the CEO, sold the mills, that was like burning the ships, right? So I think that
did they talk about that in Good to Great?
They talked about that in Good to Great. Yeah, Jim Collins. But
that's like a bold.
Exactly. That's and that's kind of the boldness that people need to take. They need to say, you know what, we see the trends going this way, and we're gonna invest our money and our time and our energy and our people in where this trend is going.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of courage to do that. But I don't think that any one company is going to do it. I think it's going to be a variety of different companies.
Yeah.
Unless someone like Amazon or Apple decide that they want to disrupt the industry. I mean, I look at Steve Jobs, as the major disruptor, right? He disrupted like 7 industries. Steve Jobs still would have been around, I'm sure he would have been on his like 15th industry that he's disrupted. And I heard I read Walter Isaacson's book, on Steve Jobs, and I heard that he was thinking about disrupting the textbook industry, the college textbooks, and that's kind of somewhat in the training space. But I would be I would have been fascinated to see what kind of disruption he had planned there.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know we're winding down here, and obviously everybody listening should go to traptails.com and get a copy of the book, or Amazon, or go to smcov.com and check you guys out. I feel like what you're saying, though, actually relates back to this kind of the theme for part 2 here about this, letting your circumstances force your choices, or paying attention to Jiminy Cricket up front.
Yep.
But I also feel like one of the things you talk about in the book is important here for anybody listening who is, whether they're innovating inside a big company or whether they're the founder, CEO, or whatever, right, is you can't be anybody else's Jiminy Cricket very effectively. I really loved when you guys said that of, we need to go first and lead by example.
Yeah.
Because trying to change somebody else and being their Jiminy Cricket of what they should do, or telling our boss how our boss needs to change.
That's right.
Or like just how unlikely that is to produce results. Any closing thoughts on that?
Yes. So a lot of people would ask my father about which habit is most important, from his perspective. And he would always say habit 2. And habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. And it's the idea of vision. It's a vision and direction of where you're going. And vision is more important than baggage. It's more important than the past. We got to learn to live out of our imagination and not our history, okay? And I think that a lot of people have not given themselves a chance to forget their past, forget their mistakes, move on from their mistakes or learn from their mistakes, and start living the life that they want to live. And I think that they're afraid to. They're just they just don't feel confident enough, or they don't feel like they're going to be successful. And we got to learn that life is about a series of making mistakes and failures. And with every failure, we become better and better and stronger. And so we got to reframe how we think about mistakes. Think about Edison and creating the light bulb. It's 1,000 iterations. There's another book I love. It's called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed, and he basically says we need to have the thinking of the aviation industry. When they have a crash, they have this black box that has the cockpit recording, and they learn about it. And traveling, like I do, I travel like 250,000 miles a year, very, very safe. Why? Because the aviation industry, learns from their mistakes. Okay. Whereas if you look at the healthcare industry, the number 3 leading cause of death is
sweep it under the rug a lot.
Yeah,
right?
another number 3 cause of death is hospital mistakes after heart disease and cancer. And can you believe that? And there's not learning in that industry. It's to cover it up, to hide.
Hide from the lawsuit.
Yeah, exactly. And there isn't this interdependence. How can we learn and so forth? They want to make it an anomaly or a one-off. So it's the idea that we need to look at mistakes as part of the process, give our chance, forgive ourselves, okay? Perfectionists out there, guys, you're going to have a hard life being a perfectionist, in the world that we live in now. And you got to just try stuff, and you got to be willing to take some risks. It's scary. And there's one thing about, reading stories about it, and then another thing living it. I heard all the stories about entrepreneurs and what it was like to be an entrepreneur. And that was one thing to read about it, and now it's another thing to live. So I'm there with you guys, and I know what that's like, and it's scary, but it's also fun and exhilarating, to be kind of guiding the ship and going on an adventure, of creating some new, unique content and new contributions, And I think that everybody has a contribution to make in their own life that's very unique to them. But they don't do it because they're stuck. They're either stuck in traps or they are stuck in their mindset and not allowing themselves to, to break out. So I would just leave the closing message of, vision is greater than baggage. Where we're headed is very important. Live life in crescendo. That means that your greatest work is always ahead of you, not behind you. And think about people like my father, like Nelson Mandela, like Winston Churchill. They all had their greatest contributions later in life. Abraham Lincoln, think about how long it took him.
Look at how old Colonel Sanders was when he started KFC, right?
Yeah. Yeah, or even Ray Kroc. I mean, the Founder movie, you can say what, that Ray wasn't maybe the most ethical person, but he was 52, when he started the whole franchising around McDonald's and building that great empire. So you're never too old, okay? So if you're young, learn from the wisdom that's out there. There's a lot of great wisdom, and follow it. And if you're older and you want to change, you can do it. It doesn't matter if you're 45 or 50 or 55 or 60 or 70. You can make the changes now.
That's awesome. Let's end there. I think that's a great place to close.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, Jess.
Well, that's it for the episode. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, if you'll remember the guys from Convoy in episodes back, Ken Free and Trent Mano, I went on one of their CEO trips to New York, and I met a guy named Brent Thompson, very successful entrepreneur. He was former CEO of Jive Communications, big company now, I think $300 or $400 million. Anyways, he started a new company called blipbillboards.com. I'm super stoked they're a sponsor now. But I remember a year and some ago when I met him, I thought it was genius. Instead of having to buy 6 months or a year's worth of billboard for thousands of dollars, you can buy 8 seconds at a time for like 10 or 20 cents. You pick what billboard you want it on, what time of day you want it to run, and it just puts so much power in the hands of marketers and CEOs who want to try something and see if it works. You can buy as many or as few as you want, change it as many times as you want. I think now our podcast is being advertised on billboards in like 18 different states because we have these guys as sponsors. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you check out blipbillboards.com. Thanks.